It's Friday, April 11th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. It's World Parkinson's Day. Today on the show, we're going to spend some time talking about the neurodegenerative disorder that impacts more than 110,000 Canadians across this country. We'll talk about living with it, the economic burden, treatments, care, and community. And if you're listening, do you live with Parkinson's? Are you a caregiver for someone living with Parkinson's? Or is there someone in your orbit, in your community? Do you want to talk about that? The lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206. Emails, thesignal@cbc.ca. And we do have an email in I'll get to later in the show. So I'll say thank you to the person who sent it in. It also shows that people are listening to those promos that we put out on the other shows because it came in this morning. All right. Let me see. We got a full house here today, which I always enjoy having, every single seat occupied in the studio. Derek Staubitzer, Executive Director, Parkinson Society, Newfoundland and Labrador. How you doing?
Good, Adam. Thank you so much for having us in today.
So before I get to everyone else, just tell us briefly about the Society and Parkinson's.
Well, we are the provincial voice for people living with Parkinson's in Newfoundland and Labrador. We've been around now for over 30 years. And our mission is to really help as best we can everyone who's living with Parkinson's. Families, the person living with Parkinson's, caregivers, friends. Mm-hmm. We reach a large number of people in the province. And through shows like this on World Parkinson's Day, we're hoping to spread that message even further, that we have a large number of programs and services that we can offer families who are living with Parkinson's in Newfoundland and Labrador.
All right, I'll keep going around the table. Rexanne Eddy, tell us about yourself.
Do you want me to talk about, I guess, my journey so far? Or?
Yeah, and you can just say anything you want for your self-introduction. It's just, whichever way you want to go for it.
Well, I'll keep it short starting off. So I found out about, 3 years ago, less than 3 years ago, that I had Parkinson's. Knew nothing about Parkinson's, so it's been a journey for me, and very thankful for the resources, especially with Derek and the organization, and of course my care team at the Miller Centre, and of course my husband and family for helping me through this.
Your husband's in the back. He just gave a thumbs up.
I got him mentioned, so I can tick that off my list.
right away. I looked through the glass, the thumb was up, and I'm like, okay, good. I like when I see thumbs up from out there, because other times the team doesn't give me a thumbs up very often. No, Arlette is giving me a thumbs down right now. Nate's giving me a thumbs up. So there we go. All right, we'll come back to your story now in a second. Phyllis Reardon, how you doing?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having this show today.
Thanks for coming in.
We just need to get word out there. We have to inform people.
Tell us more about that.
I'm a caregiver, and my husband was diagnosed, and I'll share that story a little later on, a little over 2 years ago. So I'm also chair of the St. John's branch. So doing our best to help the caregivers within the city, for sure.
And we also have Kim Furlong here too. Tell us about yourself.
I'm a physiotherapist and very passionate about helping people with Parkinson's disease. Kind of luckily partnership with the very first chapter that started in St. John's in 1988, and been supporting the group ever since, and really excited to share some of the important aspects of caring for Parkinson's and living with the disease.
All right, everyone. So you have an idea, right, of where this conversation can go today. And conversations, once we start on the signal, they can take a bit of a mind of their own. I've got some ideas, but hey, those are just my ideas, and all of you have your thoughts. So we'll roll with this. Living with Parkinson's.
Yes.
How long does it take to get a diagnosis these days?
So that is one of the issues that we're currently dealing with. Here in Newfoundland and Labrador, unfortunately, it can be up to 3 to 4 years now, depending upon where you are in the province and how serious your symptoms are. I will say, over the last year or so, coming out of some real delays we experienced during the COVID era, we've got that time down considerably. So we're making some progress, but it's still too long. By the time you go to your doctor with a tremor that you want to have investigated, you've been living with some symptoms of Parkinson's for several years already. So maybe to backtrack just a little bit, for anyone who's not aware of Parkinson's, it's a progressive neuromuscular disease that results from a lack of dopamine production in your brain. Now, most people have heard of dopamine, but they don't really know how important it is. Dopamine is really important to your body. It's a really crucial neurotransmitter that sends signals and coordinates a lot of what's happening in your brain and has a real impact on your mood, your motivation, and your movement. And then that gives rise to a series of what are called non-motor symptoms and motor symptoms. Now, Kim can talk a little bit about the motor symptoms a little later because that's primarily what she addresses. But that would be the tremor, the slowness of movement, and balance issues, and then some more that Kim will talk about. But then in terms of the non-motor symptoms, you've been dealing with a loss of smell, for example, sleep disturbances, anxiety and depression, and about 30 other potential symptoms that you may have dismissed as being something else or not being of any concern until you develop one of the motor symptoms, which gives you some worry. So if you've been dealing with some of those symptoms for 2 or 3 years, and then you have to wait another 2 or 3 years for a diagnosis after you've been to your doctor with that tremor, you've been living with Parkinson's for 4 to 5 years.
And what does that mean when you have not yet to be treated? You get to go on that that journey with your medical provider?
So it's the stress and anxiety, first off.
Massive, yeah.
That you're dealing with something, you don't know what it is, and you can't get an answer to what it is. You have suspicion. Some doctor or some friend may have mentioned, I think this is Parkinson's. In your intro, you talked about the awareness of Parkinson's, and we mentioned the awareness. When my father was going through this 30 years ago, and Kim was one of his physiotherapists, we had to explain Parkinson's to people. Mm-hmm. Now, everyone knows someone who's living with Parkinson's. Right. The numbers have increased dramatically over the last number of years. So if you're dealing with it and someone says, I think you might have Parkinson's, but you don't know it's Parkinson's, then you're not getting any treatment. There's no cure for Parkinson's, but there are treatment regimes that we can start you on with medications, and we'll talk about extensively later in the show the value of exercise for dealing with Parkinson's.
And you sent one of the bits of info you sent, right? Because there's a piece, and we'll try to get into this too on the show today, economic burden of Parkinson's in Canada. And so that's where I got that number, right? 110,000 Canadians expected to rise.
It is expected to rise. So it does affect older people more than younger people. So as our population is aging, you can expect that more people will be diagnosed with Parkinson's, especially true here in Newfoundland and Labrador, where our population is aging so much more quickly than anywhere else. The numbers are going to be staggering. To put that in some perspective, that is more people living with Parkinson's than with MS in Canada. Right. So not to pair one disease off against another.
One that gets talked about a lot.
One that gets talked about a lot, as Canada having a higher prevalence of MS in other countries. It gets talked about, but we have more people with Parkinson's than living with MS.
Yeah, and the stat here, a number expected to rise to 150,000 people by 2034.
And that's a very conservative estimate. The expectation is that it could double. Wow. And I'm seeing it. So when I started in this position 11 years ago, I was getting 2 to 3 newly diagnosed calls a week. I'm now getting that nearly per day.
Right.
It's happening.
Right. Rexanne, for yourself, right? You gave yourself, nice introduction. So good job. Can you tell us a bit just about your journey? And how, we just talked about how things can start, right? And then that medical journey. But what was the process like for you and the realization and the weight and the diagnosis?
Sure. I'm 57 now. When I was about 50, I started to have symptoms. Parkinson's has affected my left side of my body. So I had problems with movement, with strength. For instance, putting on a pair of shoes, I couldn't fit my shoe in. Like I couldn't put my foot into my shoe. I had to literally sit down and put my foot into my shoe. And balance was affected as well. So I went to my doctor, and she actually sent me to rheumatology.
Okay.
So that took about 1.5 years, 2 years to get in to see the specialist, and got sent for tests, ruling out arthritis, autoimmune disease. So that took another year and a bit. And during that time, I was getting tremors in my leg, my foot, on the left side, and in my hands as well. So I mentioned it to my family doctor and the rheumatologist, and I said, I think I need to go to neurology. So the rheumatologist made the referral, and she said, this could take another 2 to 3 years for you. So she said, why don't we send you for neurological testing? That takes 6 to 8 months, and then you'll have that out of the way. You know, you have that information when you see the neurologist. So normally, I think at that time, it takes 6 to 8 months, I think the wait list was for neurological testing. So I was closer to the 6-month period when I went. Went by myself. Thought, well, you know, you're getting a test done. It's like any other test. You know, your results go to the doctor. And so I said to my husband, you don't need to come with me. I'm going to go on. So off I go. And so I had a resident met with me first of neurology. And he did various things with me, such as watched me walk, did some movement, finger tapping too, like they do bring your different fingers towards your thumb. I did some pinpricks over various parts of my arms and legs to see if I could feel it. And just moving my limbs, I guess, for muscle stiffness. And after the appointment, he said, I'm going to go out and talk to my findings with the specialist. And so he left, and the technician came in with a machine on wheels to do the neurological testing. And next thing I know, a specialist comes in, Dr. Goodrich. And so he asked me some more questions, and then he again did some of the things that the resident had done with me. And he looked at me and he said, you have Parkinson's. And I never, ever thought I had Parkinson's, never entered my mind, even with the tremors. I thought maybe MS because of the muscle stiffness I had, but never dreamed of Parkinson's. So I must have had the look of sheer terror because he reached out and took my hand and he said, don't worry, we'll take good care of you. So I was in a daze, I was in shock. I don't remember a lot of what happened after that. I know Dr. Goodrich spoke to the technician and said, you don't have to run all the tests with her now, just run, and he just listed some things off. He said, we know it's Parkinson's, but let's just do these other things. So he left the room, and the technician just continued on with the tests. And then the Parkinson's nurse, Denise, came in, and she gave me a prescription for meds and just talked a bit about that and the side effects on my experience. And she said, you'll get an appointment in the mail to see Dr. Goodrich at a clinic, outpatient, in the Miller Centre. She asked me if I had any questions. I couldn't think of anything to say. I couldn't think of anything to ask. That's why you take someone with you to these appointments. Yeah. And so I left, made it to the car, and I got to admit I had a pity party of one and had a good cry for a couple of minutes. Pulled myself together, phoned my husband, and I said, Greg, you're not going to believe this. I said, I have Parkinson's. And he said, you're kidding me. And I said, yeah. He said, where are you? And I said, I'm in the parking lot at Health Science. He said, I'm coming to get you. And I said, no, I can make it home. So anyway, he got home before I did. But before I left the parking lot, I did phone my mom because she knew I was going for testing. And, of course, she was upset when I told her. So I'm not from town originally, so she lives 2.5 hours away. So I was worried about her. So when I got off the phone, I texted my aunt and uncle who live across the road from her. And I said, you have to check on Mom. I said, I just got diagnosed with Parkinson's. She's upset. Can you go check on her? So I went home, and myself and my husband were talking about it, and he was asking me questions, and I said, I have no idea, because I never thought to ask anything. Yeah. And so he was going to stay home with me for the afternoon, but I had an online course to do for work. And I said, I'm going back to work, which I did. And I've been working ever since. So that began my journey. So May 11th, 2022, in the morning, is when I got diagnosed almost 3 years ago.
May 11th, 2022, in the morning.
Yeah.
With the that anniversary coming up just around the corner, how are you right now?
I'm trying to remain positive. Yeah. Like Derek said, there's no cure. You carry it with you every day, but it will not define me. Yeah. It will not define our family. Soon going to retire, my husband as well. And we've got plans and plan to travel and go to our cabin and do fun things. And yeah, so I'm, like Derek was talking about exercise. I get up 5 o'clock every morning to exercise before I go to work. And that has made a huge difference. And I encourage anybody with Parkinson's to keep moving. It's a struggle some days. You do not feel well. You're tired. Fatigue is huge. But get out there, and we have exercise programs I'm sure you guys are going to talk about soon. And really encourage people just to get moving.
Yeah. Where's your cabin?
Thorburn Lake, Terranova.
Nice. How often do you guys go to your cabin?
Not so much in the winter.
Yeah.
My husband goes out more in the fall and winter than I do,
Yeah.
but we try to get there most weekends.
Okay, so that's the spot for.
Yeah, we can go kayaking. We're on the water, so it's awesome. We have a boat, and so it's a great area.
Excellent. All right. There's more I want to ask you, but I'm going to keep working my way around the table. Phyllis, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. A little hoarse here right now, I think.
Yeah, it happens. Time of year where we've got, so if you need more water, we can get it for you, so just let us know. Tell us about your story.
Well, our story began on January 10th, 2023. It was, I had my suitcase packed for a winter in Portugal. We were leaving on the 13th. And so my husband, Tom, said his back was really hurting him. So I suggested he just fill up the bath and put some Epsom salts in there and take a bath.
Nice suggestion, right? I would do the same.
Absolutely, which he did.
Yeah.
So about 25 minutes in, he calls out, "I can't get out of the bath." Which I respond, "What do you mean you can't get out of the bath? Just get out of the bath." He said, "I can't get out of the bath." So I go to the bathroom, and he's sitting up, so 90-degree angle. And I said, "Oh, easy. Just pull up your right leg and use your right foot as a lever. Push yourself up." He said, "Won't move." "Your left leg, it won't move. Right elbow, left elbow, nothing." So I put on a pair of socks so I wouldn't slip in the bath. Got into the bath behind him and reached up and got his top of his body over the bath. We got him out, and interestingly enough, when he got out of the bath, he was able to stand. So that was late on the 10th. I let it go, but I woke a lot during that night because there's definitely something wrong there. The next morning, I'm usually up at 5. So the next morning, I'm up at 5, and I do a search of brain not being able to communicate with muscles. And because it was 5, I didn't want to read. I hit images. And this image of a man came up on the screen, dressed in gray hair, and just bent over. And this is how Tom had been for a year prior to this. And it said it was Parkinson's. Shock, tears, Parkinson's. Can't be Parkinson's. We had breakfast, and then later on that morning I said to Tom, "Let's sit here, and I want you to look at this picture of this gentleman. Does this look like you?" And his sense of humor is great. This guy was dressed in gray, and Tom wears gray all the time. Tom said, "If he wasn't wearing gray, he may not look as much like me. But yes, he looks like me." So this was a man who's had Parkinson's and a sketch of the posture. So I remembered that I had heard there was a Parkinson Society from a friend Rob Shea, who had worked with Derek. And I recall him saying years before that there was a Parkinson Society, but I had no idea. I hadn't given that thought in 20 or 30 years or something. But I did do a search for Parkinson's NL, found an email address, emailed and got a response back immediately from Derek Staubitzer.
He's a good man, that Derek.
Rumor has it.
Right? He's not bad.
And his name was very familiar to me because we worked together in education. Just this wonderful, I would tell Tom, there's this wonderful, intelligent young man working downstairs in urban planning. So back to my story here. The next day, I contacted Derek, told him the situation. The next day, he brought a package of information for us. And when we sat down to read it, the first thing it said was, "There's no cure." So that's a little bit of a shocker. But the next thing it said was that exercise was the therapy. And I looked at Tom and said, "Well, we're good because we lift weights, we swim, we walk. We're going to be okay." So now we did cancel our flights, obviously. We didn't get to Portugal that winter. We went through February, March, and then Derek kept in contact with us with information. Any questions I had, Derek was there to answer them. And then April came and Parkinson's Day, and we had our education day. And I think, I don't know how I got Tom to that meeting. I don't know if I dragged him or pushed him, but he reluctantly went to that meeting because he was in denial. He's listening there right now. He was in denial for the first full year, he said. So we went to that meeting, and Kim was speaking. And Kim was speaking about Parkinson's exercise. So we learned it was something that really spoke to Tom. I mean, I shared information, he read, but when Kim Furlong got up there and spoke about exercise and Parkinson's, he felt that she was speaking to him. She knew exactly what he was thinking. She knew exactly how he was feeling. And that hooked him. We learned that day that although we lifted weights and walked and did our swimming, that was exercise. But we learned that there's Parkinson's exercise. And he's 5 days a week right now doing Kim's class Monday, Sarah Stoker's classes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, swimming on Friday.
And how's that treating him?
Oh, good question. So this posture of this little man bent over, his posture came back. Yeah. So the Parkinson exercises, the regular exercises are amazing, but Parkinson exercises just corrected his posture and actually plateaued a lot of the symptoms. So, yes, I guess that's where we are right now.
Kim, that's nice endorsement, obviously. But what's this when you give these messages to folks? When you talk, and you mentioned since '88 onward, right? How do you communicate this message about the importance of Parkinson's exercises for physiotherapy and your business?
I think you need to, one, as a physiotherapist, assess the person.
Yeah.
You need to know who you're talking to, because exercise is different from everybody. What you enjoy and what I enjoy might be completely opposite. But if I can put the therapeutic exercise on top of what you enjoy, it's a win-win. I'm happy you're doing Parkinson's exercises, and you're happy you're doing something you like. So I remember that day when Phyllis and Tom were there, and they came up and spoke to me. And when you can give people hope and treatment, it makes life so much easier. And Newfoundlanders are very resilient. Derek mentioned his dad, and I met his dad years ago. Newfoundlanders have great sense of humor, and they get on with life. And it makes my job really easy. Exercise is probably one of the best things you can do in life for all of us. But when you have Parkinson's, you have an extra challenge. You have these motor symptoms of Parkinson's. And you need a physiotherapist who understands this to help you deal with those. And there are lots of research and advancements now in very specific exercises for people with Parkinson's. Out of the States is the Lee Silverman voice and Big and Loud. There's Power for Parkinson's. There's always new advancements. When we do exercise class on Mondays, it's a time for people to come together. When they come, everybody's head is down, their posture's flexed. You know, it's 11 o'clock on a Monday. Do I really want to be here? Do I want people to see me like I am? I'm having a bad day. And when the exercise class is over in an hour, people are smiling, they're laughing, they're joking. They almost forget they have Parkinson's. We have dual task exercises with cognitive loading and coordination tasks, so the boys are competing on a ping pong table. We have blaze pods that Derek provided, and the women and men are fighting to see whose coordination is the fastest. So exercise sometimes is a chore, but it can be made fun. And it's it's an essential part of living with Parkinson's.
Yeah, essential part. And what you're describing is play, right? Which is the fun part, which is so important with community and having people there, learning together, feeling good together, laughing together, and a bit of competition, right?
Absolutely.
Massively important.
Can I just add something about the early diagnosis?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Physiotherapists are trained we're experts in assessing movement, normal movement and not normal movement. And sometimes when you're waiting to get to see specialists and doctors, you could go see your physiotherapist, because physiotherapists know about flexibility, they know how muscles should feel and how they should move, and they certainly know a lot about balance and gait. And our clinic is Newfoundland Balance and Dizziness Centre, so unlike most physiotherapists, we specialize in balance assessments. So we see a lot of people with MS, Parkinson's. And when people come to see me, I usually can tell when they walk in my room if they have Parkinson's, because you get so skilled at looking for the flexed posture, the loss of arm swing. And one of the first things I do when I'm worried about it is I'll pass them a piece of paper and a pen and say, show me your autograph, your signature. Because one of the early symptoms of is stiffness of muscles and slowness of movements. And people will notice that the amplitude of their signature and their handwriting is deteriorating. And you may notice that the person you're looking at, their facial expressions aren't as quick or as fast. So sometimes just getting in to see your physiotherapist might help you realize what's going on with you. And then we can say, look, there's exercises, there's support group, there's programs that can help you while you're getting in to see your doctor to get a diagnosis.
Yeah, that sounds really big, right? Because if you've got a 3 to 4 year wait,
yes,
but then you're starting exercise, and it's exercise, right? We're not talking about medication or something. It's exercise. You're not hurting yourself with exercise, but if it goes the way,
type of exercise.
Yeah, you're doing the right type of exercise for what could be this diagnosis that's coming.
And that's what we encourage people to do when they're caught in that dilemma of not having a diagnosis yet, is to start living as if you do.
Right.
If you don't, as it turns out, great. If you do, when you're diagnosed and you got your appointment a year or so down the road, well, you're well ahead of the game because you're already doing what you should be doing. So we have many people in our exercise classes who don't have a diagnosis yet, but are living that way. And I think through being around other people who are living with Parkinson's, recognizing, okay, I've got this. There is no test for Parkinson's, right? There's no definitive test. Yeah. So it's just an assessment, as Rexanne went through, from a number of different symptoms. How many of these symptoms do you have? How serious are these symptoms? If you get enough of them on a serious enough gradient, I'm sorry, you're told what Rexanne was told.
Right.
And Rexanne, is a good case, and thank you so much for coming in today, Rexanne. It's really important for you to be here to tell that story, because what people think of when they think of Parkinson's is that man on the poster that you saw, Phyllis.
Yes, absolutely.
Rexanne is not that man on the poster, and what we are seeing is that most of our new members are not that man on the poster. So we're seeing a lot more of young women being diagnosed with Parkinson's.
We've got Danielle on the line, calling from Mount Pearl. Hi, Danielle.
Hi there. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? What are your thoughts for the show, input for the show today?
Well, I wanted to talk about my DBS surgery, and I'm sorry. I apologize. I have a cold. I woke up, I coughed all night.
That's okay.
I said, oh, God, I'm not going to be able to talk. But so if I have to get a sip of water, excuse me. Okay, so I had DBS surgery about 3 weeks ago. And DBS surgery, for people who don't know, is deep brain stimulation surgery. And basically it's used as not as a last resort, but as a last resort for people who have tried every concoction of medications and other treatments that have not really worked for them. And so I first of all, to backtrack a little bit, I'm 49 years old. I have young-onset Parkinson's, and I was first diagnosed in 2017. When my symptoms started, I was pregnant with my fourth child. And I have 4 boys, and he's almost 10 now. So that's so long I've had the disease. And I want to say that DBS surgery, it's amazing. It's just amazing. And they place electrodes in your brain, and they turn them on after they wait a couple of weeks, and then they turn them on. Like there's electrodes planted deep in your brain. They go up through your neck and in through your neck and down into a device that's implanted in your chest. And the surgery was about 5 hours long. And they said it couldn't have gone any better, which I was so pleased about because I was very, very nervous about the whole thing. But I want to talk about the length of time also that it takes to have this surgery. Well, first of all, I have so much to tell you. I don't know where to start.
It's okay. You can do one at a time, and we can work through it. It's all
okay.
good.
Take your time, Danielle.
Come in and take my seat,
I know.
Danielle.
I just don't know where to start. Okay, so I lived in the U.S. for 17 years. I was actually diagnosed in the U.S. My husband's from Georgia, and then we lived in Georgia and then moved to Maine. And Maine is where I was diagnosed. And I'm so thankful for that because I'm so thankful I'm not there right now. But I'm in the U.S., but we moved to Canada in 2017. And that was the same year I was diagnosed. But I was diagnosed the same year I moved to Newfoundland. I had to come home to have the support of my family. We had no family there. I didn't have any, and he didn't have any there in Maine. And so anyway, my symptoms started with lack of coordination on my left side. I had a dragging foot. Sometimes I'd trip up with my foot. I forget her name. The lady that was just on a second ago. No, the one that was just previously on. She talked about her husband's, or Tom's, was it her husband?
Yeah, Phyllis.
Tom, who he could put his foot in his shoe, but couldn't move it forward. I think she was the one who said that. And that was what I had to. I couldn't push my foot in. It's like I couldn't initiate the movement to get my foot in my shoe. I had the finger tapping thing. I couldn't do at all. I could barely. My fingers were like there were magnets between them, and like they were all stuck together. They would lock in place when I was doing something for more than a couple of seconds, like the same movement. My fingers would just lock up and stick together. God, there's so many symptoms I had. I to this day, I still have my sense of smell, which is odd. But I had no arm swing. And I saw, actually, it was the third doctor that I saw in Maine that confirmed that I had Parkinson's. The first one I saw, he didn't really think I did that. He said, you have a movement disorder, I think, but I don't know what it is. Okay. And then the second one, he was a real jerk. And when I walked in, he said, you are Parkinsonian. You have this, and this. You have bradykinesia. And my husband was with me, and he said, look at her eyes. They blink so slowly. Or she blinks, like, she keeps her eyes open for so long. Your eyes would just burn if you did that. And so, like, he was really a jerk. And he did send me for some testing, though. He sent me for an MRI. And he sent me for what was called a DAT scan, a DAT scan. And that's supposed to show the lobes of your brain that contain the dopamine, how much dopamine is left. And we didn't have this test here for the longest time. But actually last year, I think it was last year, I had the first one in Newfoundland. Mm-hmm. And so it's like a diagnostic test to see where the dopamine is and how much is left in your brain. And in the beginning, I had dopamine only on my left side. The right side was like almost entirely deficient of dopamine. So I had all the symptoms on my left side. And then when I had that scan, which was last year, because I had so much testing to have before the DBS surgery, that so basically I was the first one to have that test. They wanted me to have it in Halifax, but they were able to get the materials here so that I could have it here in Newfoundland. And so I was a big. I was like the talk of the day with all the doctors. They told me that they were studying my brain all day. And,
if I could just interrupt there for a second, Danielle.
Yes.
One of the issues we have here is that we don't have all the latest and greatest testing and surgeries available.
That, yeah.
So,
I know, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, so the DBS surgery, our patients have to go to Halifax or Toronto. In Danielle's case,
yes,
she went to Halifax. And that's, of course, a significant burden on them time-wise and cost-wise, right?
Yeah. And so, anyway, I was up to the DBS surgery. So I found a neurologist here, and it was Dr. Goodridge. But I found him while I was still in Maine because I knew I was going to move home, and I knew that with the length of time it takes to get through to see specialists and stuff here, I just didn't know how long it was going to take me because I had not been living here for a long time. So Dr. Goodridge I found him online. I found that he was a professor at the university here, the medical school, and I said, this sounds great. I'm going to send him an email and tell him about myself and that I've already been diagnosed and what should be my next move when I get to Newfoundland. And he was so gracious. He was very kind. He sent me back an email and told me exactly what I should do. He said, get a referral from your neurologist to me, and then you can come see me as soon as you move up here. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. He didn't even have to send me an email back, but he did. And so within 4 months I was in to see him, and now I think the current wait to see him is 3 years, maybe, or something, some like crazy number. And so I went to him. He just kept me. Well, first of all, the lady that diagnosed me, as soon as I walked in, she said, you have Parkinson's, and she was very sweet. And I said, I'm so worried because I have 4 kids, and what am I going to do? What am I going to be like in 5 years or 10? She said, don't worry about this. She said, they're coming up with better treatments and better drugs every day. And she said, my brother works at the Michael J. Fox Foundation in some city down there, and she said he told me they're very, very close to finding a cure. She said he told me with his own mouth. And so she said, don't worry. She said, you have a young onset. She said, put your symptoms on the back burner. Just forget about it. And within 10 years, it might progress a little bit, but she said, you're going to be fine. She said, you're going to benefit from the new whatever treatments come out because you're so young. And I was 30. Well, I was 40 at the time, 41 at the time when I was diagnosed. And so anyway, make a long story short, I'm going to talk about the DBS surgery. So Dr. Goodrich, after about, he put me on medication, the same medication that she put me on, or that I was already on. He just kept up with that one. But after about 2 years, that one kind of fizzled out, and it didn't really have the same efficiency. So I went on the Levocarb, which is the main go-to medicine for Parkinson's. Unfortunately, it's a very unstable drug, and it fluctuates. I had major motor fluctuations throughout the day, going from, so when my medicine was wearing off, I was planted to the floor. I couldn't get my feet up, and I still have that issue. So I'll tell you about that in a minute. So I know, I have too much to say. Anyway, so the Levocarb, and when it was working at its peak, I had major dyskinesias, and dyskinesias are involuntary movements that could be like fidget, kind of like you're fidgeting, or leg up in the air. It could be any number of things. Up on my toes, and flailing around the house with my arms. I can't even tell you what it's like. If you feel like you've run a marathon after you've had a few minutes of that. And so it was just very
that's one of the
unpleasant for
real
me.
problems of the medication, and other people out there listening today living with Parkinson's who are taking that will recognize that that's a problem, so they need to take another medication to try to curb that.
And for what Danielle's saying, right?
Yeah.
So we've gone through the beginning.
This is great.
Diagnosis, the medications, issues with it. Also this and the newer treatment, which is where we started the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Danielle, so I'm just wondering, because I want to toss everything you're saying back to the folks here in the studio. So then, with the medical procedure you just had, where does that bring things with you, and how you're doing?
Okay, so right after I had the surgery, there's generally what they call a honeymoon phase. Okay, and the honeymoon phase is that you feel almost normal, like you've never had Parkinson's disease, and it's caused by the electrodes that are planted in the brain. There's some swelling around the electrodes, and while the swelling is there, you feel as if you've never had Parkinson's disease, and that is exactly what happened to me. Also, I want to say that your voice gets really small when you have Parkinson's, and like I could barely talk. Like I always sounded like I was hoarse, and like just a very low voice, and it drove me crazy that my husband is always saying "wash," and I drove him crazy because I could never get my point across because he can't hear me, and that was really an issue. And after the surgery, I could talk again. My voice was louder.
Are you kidding?
Anyway, anyway, that was the honeymoon phase, and it usually lasts probably a couple of weeks if you're lucky. Yeah. And it just ended for me. Okay. I don't think it's fully ended, but I had the surgery on the 20th of March, and now it's April. April 11th.
And you're not fully you're not fully programmed yet, right, Danielle?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. So you have this honeymoon phase, and then they wait for the swelling to go down, and they want you to be fully your Parkinson's symptoms to have fully come back.
You returned.
And so returned. I forget the word. Anyway. So yeah, my symptoms have mostly come back. I have the dyskinesis when I'm taking my medicine, and it's working at fatigue, and then I've had the sticking to the floor at other times.
So
and,
when they program Danielle's device now, she should go back to something similar to the honeymoon period again.
Yes.
Right.
And with the new devices that are available, they can do that remotely now. Previous devices, they'd have to go see a neurologist and shag around with it in the office. Now they can do it remotely. So the technology's come a long way.
It's really amazing.
Like, it's not, and DBS is a great surgery for a certain number of people, but not for everyone.
Right.
And while it will address many of the motor symptoms that Danielle was experiencing, and she's an ideal candidate for this, it doesn't do much for your non-motor symptoms.
Right. Danielle, final thought from you before I go. Just a quick final thought, because I want to. There's a few other things I want to get to, including talking a little bit more about reaction to what you've been said. But what's your final thought before I let you go?
The final thought is, if you can possibly get the DBS surgery, to go ahead and do it, because I had reservations about it myself, because it's a brain surgery, and it's, things can happen, and even though it's very rare, they can cause stroke, and can cause cognitive defects. It can, a lot of things can happen during a major surgery, but it's worth the risk for me. It was worth the risk because my symptoms were so bad, and so basically, I feel as if I have a new outlook on life, and basically, I have a future to look forward to with my children and my family and friends, and I just say go for it. It's been life-changing for me, just having that couple of weeks where I had no symptoms. So
thank you, Danielle.
Thank you for calling the show and for sharing all that.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Danielle.
so discombobulated.
It was all good. You did really well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Danielle there calling from Mount Pearl. You're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today's show, we're talking about Parkinson's. It is World Parkinson's Day. If you've got thoughts for us, thesignal@cbc.ca. The text line, 709-327-8206. Calls, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Here with me in the studio, we've got Derek Staubitzer, Executive Producer, Parkinson's Society NL, Rexanne Eddy, living with young-onset Parkinson's, Phyllis Reardon, and Kim Furlong. I got a note. I'm going to read it.
Okay.
And this comes to something I wanted to talk about for community. I can't say who it is, but you already know who it is. I would like to express my appreciation for the work that the local Parkinson Society does. I'm a senior who's the primary care provider for my husband, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's 15 years ago. As of late, I've been struggling with the fatigue and loneliness that comes with the job. My husband is a wonderful partner, and I see my responsibilities as a gift that I am able to do for him. I think the hardest part is seeing the person you love struggling so much. It is truly heartbreaking. Fortunately, I reached out to the Parkinson's Society. I left a message on their phone, and shortly after, I received a call from Derek. He was very helpful and compassionate. He emailed me all the information that I needed. Got another phone call from Sheila Reardon, who helps with the Phyllis Reardon, who helps with the outreach program. I attended a coffee get-together this morning with other ladies. It was a pleasure to meet with them. I left feeling blessed to reach out to Derek. I hope that anyone who is listening to your program this morning is in a position to help themselves, to make themselves available to the society. There's so much that they can provide and care. So there's lots there, right? It's a very lovely note from this person. Yeah. So then that community word, right?
Yeah, sometimes people need a lot of help. Like Danielle, when we were working through convincing her that deep brain stimulation surgery was the right approach for her, because she was nervous about doing that. And sometimes it's just someone to talk to and to know that they're not alone. And that was the case in this call, emailer's case. And talking to me and talking to Phyllis, that gave that person all the hope in the world that she needed for this week. Next week's a new week, and she might need something else next week, and we'll be there to help out as best we can whatever comes up next. And that's true for all of our members. And I know there are people listening across the province who may not have reached out to us yet for all kinds of reasons. Just make the call. Give us a call. Our 1-800 number is in every phone book in the province if you're still getting a phone book, or find us online, and we will tell you what we're able to offer you as support.
Phyllis, when you talk to folks about support, that first connection, right?
Yes.
How when people realize, right? So they get a note from Derek and then talk to you and stuff. When you see that realization of I'm not alone, right? That this is something that others are going through and have gone through, and we can go through this together. What's that moment? What are those moments like?
It's and I went through this.
Yeah.
And it is a difficult job becoming a caregiver. It's not a title that you choose. I chose teacher, wife, mom, and then now caregiver. And you heard how I said it came to me, just like this, suitcase packed, and all of a sudden your life changes. So it has been, for the past 2 years, the people who went ahead of me, and they know who they are, who have helped me understand through a coffee, maybe a coffee a Thursday morning. Since then, in the past year or so, we have... And I guess I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but it's an understanding. So when I connected with Sandra, it was that understanding of knowing where she was. Yeah. And so as of the past year and a half, we have a counseling session with Carolyn Hapgood, and that is the first Wednesday of the month at the Boathouse. Through Parkinson's. And on the last Thursday of the month, the Presentation Sisters were kind enough to give us their retreat center at Virginia Waters the last Thursday of the month. And Carolyn's is structured, but the Thursday morning, the last Thursday of the month, it's a drop-in. You can chat Parkinson's if you want. You can bring your knitting. You can read a book. You can sit and have a coffee. Or if the weather is good, just walk around the grounds there. So it is, I call it a 2-hour escape. It's really difficult for many caregivers to get that time to get away and have an hour or so for themselves. So it's really important that our caregivers, whether you're listening, whether you're a member of our society or not, it doesn't matter. You really need to take that time each day, 10 minutes, 15, 20, to take care of yourself. And I have a care book with me that is called, so if you want to write this down, all kinds of, you can see, it's like my Bible. There's all kinds of little tips in here for caregivers, for care partnering. And it is free from Parkinson's Canada. And you can find that on their website, and that is Parkinson's Canada, so www.parkinsons.ca. If you go in there, you'll find several resources. That's one for the caregiver. And the other one is called Every Victory Counts. And these two books sit on our coffee table. All kinds of help in there for the caregiver.
So the Every Victory Counts book is produced by the Davis Finney Foundation out of the U.S., and he was a former Olympic athlete. They are doing the best research on Parkinson's disease anywhere in the world right now. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, I can also facilitate getting them a copy of that as well. But if you're online, all their information is also online. Just visit their website, Davis Finney, and that's spelled with a P-H, Finney, I-N-N-E-Y. That's your go-to source for Parkinson's information.
Yes.
We've got Lori on the line calling from St. John's. Hi, Lori.
Hi there.
Go
How
ahead.
are you all?
Yeah, good. Thoughts on the show?
Yeah, so I just wanted to call in. I'm a speech therapist. I work at the Miller Center here, and Parkinson's population is a group of people that I work with pretty much on a weekly, if not even a daily basis. I just wanted to echo everything that everybody said in there on the show there. Yes, we see all of that, and we see the struggles that both the person with Parkinson's has and the caregivers as well. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that, of course, people who are living with Parkinson's will definitely know about, but also just for the general public.
Sure. Keep it to about a minute, because then I got to wrap up with folks here in studio.
Absolutely. Okay. Communication. Speaking is one of the things that is really majorly impacted by Parkinson's. As one of your guests said, your voice gets really small, and it's true. The other thing that is something to be well aware of is that swallowing can be really impacted by Parkinson's. And these are two areas that a speech pathologist can help you out with. And so if there are any people that are experiencing these issues and they're thinking, oh, I didn't even realize that I could get help with this, there are speech therapists in the healthcare system at the Miller Centre right now, or if you're across the province, any of your local speech pathologists can help, or in the community.
Lori,
thank you.
Thank you so much for your call. That was great. You did really well. Thank you. I love it when I'm like, yeah, you got a minute. You did that really, really well. Rexanne Eddy, any thoughts as we wind down this show? Any final thoughts from yourself? And thank you for sharing today and for coming in and talking.
No problem. Thanks for having me. If you get the diagnosis like I do, once I went to the first clinic at the Miller Centre and I got the information for the Parkinson's Society here, it took me a little while to reach out. It took me a while to come to, I guess, to understanding that, this is what I had, come to grips with that. And I didn't know if I wanted to meet people, have it out there, and meet other people that were worse than I was, and see how maybe I would be, But I've been to the exercise classes. It's great to interact with everyone and get their perspective as well. And, to reach out to the supports that are there by the Parkinson's Society and take advantage.
For shows like this, for when folks like yourself, when you share like this, I think it is so important and all the sharing you've all done today, I think it is massively, massively important for everyone to kind of understand what's available, what resources are there, and the supports that are available. Kim, any final thoughts from yourself?
Just if anybody's out there who's afraid to reach out, we have such wonderful activities and organization with the Parkinson Society in Newfoundland and Labrador. You really should at least just make the phone call to Derek, if nothing else, because the supports here for Newfoundland and Labrador are really good.
Phyllis?
Yes, and I don't know if Derek mentioned this, but the exercise programs, because exercise is the therapy, and our exercise programs are in the St. John's area and on the West Coast, in Central, and online. So it doesn't matter where you are in the province. If you have a laptop or an iPhone or whatever in front of you, you can access those fitness classes. And the ones on Facebook are there. You Zoom and Facebook, but on Facebook they stay on there. And some of the Zoom ones are recorded also. So really, you can stay in your own home and do those exercises.
Quick last minute question came in. Is there anything folks can do to prevent it?
Well, that's a complex question. So
with 30 seconds left.
You're going to have to bring us back because we really only scratched the surface of Parkinson's today. There's so much more we need to talk to. Basically, the current thinking is that it's starting in your intestinal tract somewhere with clumpings of these little proteins called alpha-synucleins. There's some theories of what causes that to happen, but basically just eat healthy, live positive, and exercise.
Live life.
And as Phyllis was saying, we have 15 different exercise programs happening weekly now across the province, either in person or online. Unfortunately, with Parkinson's comes a particular little bit of apathy where people don't want to participate. They don't care they don't want to participate, and they don't care that they don't care they don't want to participate. It takes usually a caregiver or someone to give them that push to say you should be doing this. Once they start, they see the benefits, and as Kim said, she sees the difference with her group when they come in to when they leave.
I won't let you walk away without exercise.
Yeah.
Adam, big thank you to Derek Staubitzer from all of us, all of the health professionals in Newfoundland. We appreciate the support.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
we're right
welcome.
up against it. Thanks for the show. Thank you for coming in, for sharing, folks.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
That is it for today, everyone, for this Friday show. On Monday, looking for a psychological assessment in Newfoundland and Labrador. You might have to be prepared to wait. We're going to dig into an article by my colleague, Jenna Head, and talk about the ins and outs of ADHD diagnoses and a lot more. Cheers.